let's have a candid chat about third-party risk and supply chain risk. Anyone who has access to any of your systems, any of your data, is a point of risk for you. If you have a managed service provider, they are being targeted heavily by threat actors. If you have a managed security service provider, they're being targeted heavily by threat actors. Managed service providers have been responsible for a lot of the supply chain attacks for companies in the last couple of years. And so have the software that they've been using, like SolarWinds and Kaseya. So I would not, put it past a managed service provider as being the largest risk to your organization. I work for a managed service provider right now that is a large one, and we run through a lot of steps to put authentication mechanisms in front of everything and protect everything we can. And we're constantly vigilant about security because we realize we're the biggest threat to a lot of our customers because of that third-party risk. There are a lot of MSPs that don't do that, that believe that they have security on lock because they have an antivirus deployed. They don't really understand security because they're not security professionals. They haven't been exposed to the level of threat that is out there. They are great at, fixing computers, but don't really understand the level of security that is needed in this day and age. This is very true, especially with your hometown MSPs, your smaller MSPs. I am really leaning against their ability to secure your organization well as secure themselves if they're very small. So, what about other vendors? What about the marketing vendor that's tied into your CRM and has an API key and creds into your system? What about contractors that are doing work and have creds and into, log in via VPN and into your applications? What about other vendors like a software vendor that has remote access in order to do updates and manage things? I was doing some VCIO work the other day for a business, and they had probably 40 different vendors that have access to their systems and data. A lot of different marketing vendors, a lot of different advertising vendors, CRM analytics vendors, things like that. But they all have access to PII. And you ask the company, do you have any policies in place with that vendor? Do they have policies in place? Do they have any contractual obligation behind your data and stuff like that? And, of course it's no. But I encourage people when they're renewing these contracts and when you're talking to vendors, and even retroactively, now that you have a contract, identify the risk that vendor puts you in. It may be that they don't know security, they're not monitoring it properly, they're not encrypting your data. They get breached, your data gets breached. Who's at fault here? It's you. You're the one that your customer entrusted with their data. So that's data privacy. But there's also, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. A third-party, risk supply chain situation can go wrong for any of you. A piece of software you buy could take down your systems. And so there's inherent risk behind almost anything. Now let's think about other sources of risk that aren't like IT related. Let's think about the landscaper. he may have a key to your facility, is on premises and is trusted. How far can he get in? Is he able to get in there when nobody's looking, when nobody's watching, etc. Does he pose any risk to property, to people's lives? Is he following proper safety mechanisms, etc.? Really, everything adds risk, and every vendor adds risk. Some vendors, like that landscaper, it's minimal risk. You can pretty much trust a landscaper. You might want to do some kind of background checking, and especially depending on what your environment is. But landscapers are usually pretty safe. But if you're talking about your security access card company, your locksmiths, your maintenance company, your HVAC vendor, your other IoT manufacturing equipment vendor, what's your HVAC vendor put on the network? Usually a bunch of devices. Security camera vendor, access key, door entry vendor, same thing. A lot of IP addresses, a lot of OT devices, things that have a security impact that often aren't getting patched and managed, and are a vulnerability to you and your company. So what I encourage everybody to do is do a due diligence. Do a risk assessment, whether you're using a solution online like Risk Recon or something else, or just using a due diligence form and doing old school risk assessment. It's worthwhile for you to evaluate the risk of your vendors, because next contract renewal, you may realize it's time to change your vendor. All right, well, thanks for listening to me rant about third-party risk and supply chain risk. All right, thanks a lot. Bye.